Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. You know, we take a walk way back in history, but can you top this? We're going to go way back to a town not too far from, here in the state of Jefferson, right?
Yes.
My guest, welcome back, Bonita Spencer.
Yes.
And who are we looking at when we look way back in history?
That's my great grandfather and great grandmother.
Their names are?
They were the Herters, and they were in Germany, and then they had the children, and there were 11 in the family in Germany.
And how did they get to Oregon?
Well, my grandmother didn't like to have to carry the manure on her head in a basket out from underneath their house. That was the thing. She was
barn underneath
underneath the house. That's the German way. Keeps you warm and safe. And she didn't like that.
No, I agree with you.
It was her job because she was the oldest of the 11, and the next boy under her was 3 years younger. So she went to live with her grandfather, and then when she was about 17, she came to the United States. They made an arrangement that she would work for somebody in New York City to pay for her passage.
That was kind of an indentured thing, and that's how my husband's grandparents got here. You say, well, I'll work for a year if you'll pay for my trip over.
Well, I think they were thinking this might be a permanent job or something for her, but I never heard the details except that it just didn't work out.
Aha!
But relatives of them, her cousin lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So she went to live with the cousins.
Now, is this the family?
That's the family left in Germany, and this is her.
Oh, she was the eldest
She
and
was the
probably had a
eldest
lot
one.
of responsibility.
Yes, more than probably should have been.
Well, sure.
But,
Work.
But
So then how did she get out west?
well, go back a few years. Just before that, my grandfather had come to the United States, and his cousins were the Bowerleys in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So he went there, and him and his mother and father. And this is the ones that were in that picture. And the father died not long after that, and he went there when he was 16, and then so he and his mother went west.
Oh, just the two of them.
Just the two of them. They left the sisters with the Bowerleys in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they married into the family there, and so, but they came west and started Bonanza.
That's a whole town.
Bonanza, Oregon. The brother had come earlier and had gotten them started in the irrigation, and Mike, he got the first purchase on horses to upgrade the stock bloodline of their workhorses.
Okay, now, so your roots go back to Klamath Falls, Bonanza.
Bonanza.
Was it really Klamath Falls at the time? Or?
It was Linkville.
Linkville. I've heard of Linkville.
Well, they came out there, and they were able to homestead 2 sections each.
Oh.
Later, it became just 1 section, but in those days, this was in the 1800s, late 1800s, and they were able to homestead 2 each, but they had to live on their land, and they wanted to live together, so they got 4 sections all together, and he built a split shake house, a 2-story little house on the 4 corners.
I guess that's how you can live on both. The kitchen's in one.
He slept upstairs on the west side, and she slept downstairs on the right side, and their kitchen and living room were together.
Why not? One foundation and one roof?
That house is still standing over there at Bonanza. It is the center of many additions and additions.
New houses have been built around it.
Well, when their kids, more kids and all these things, why they needed a bigger house. And I remember when they added one on, another room on. And then later, after, way later, when all of them were dead and somebody else bought the property, I went over there and asked him if they knew the history of that. He says, yes, I've got a nail in the middle of my front room floor.
Which is the corner.
Where the two corners came together. But after he and his grandmother were, they were farming it for several years. When he got 33 years old, he wrote back to the Bowerleys. Well, in the meantime, my grandmother had come and was staying with the Bowerleys.
Ah.
And she heard about this man, and that was out west. They started writing to each other.
Romance.
Pretty soon, he went back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and
swept her off her feet.
Yep, claimed her for his bride. And she was 18, and I think he was 33 or something like that.
Oh, quite.
And there was a 18-year-old, or 15, 18-year-old difference there.
And
they came back out, and his brother met them at Ashland at the end of the train and took them up over the mountain.
Green Springs, I'll bet you.
This must have been probably Topsy Road. I've heard about that road.
Yeah.
My mother would have shudders every time my father would tease her and said, shall we go Topsy Road? No! And my husband and I have hunted on Topsy Road, and I went a little ways, and looking down into that canyon, I can understand why you
it's scary,
would not want to do anything like that.
Well, now, I don't know if you have a picture of your mother and father in here.
I don't.
But look at what I found. Who's this?
That's me.
Oh,
and,
aren't you cute?
There's my crazy cat and the camera, and I'm crazy about taking pictures. And there's maybe one here where I'm in a box. They put me in a box.
Tell me why.
Well, because they were running a laundry down in Tennant right at that time.
Tennant?
Tennant, California, for the Weed Lumber Company. When my mother got married, they went down there to earn a living, and he was logging and building carpentering. He built the hospital, and Tennant the town is still there. It has been kept up all through the years.
Oh, I look forward to visiting Tennant. Now, is that the wooden box?
Yes, a cardboard box. Yes, cardboard
box.
What
a playpen, huh?
Yes, and I was visiting, and when my cousin came, he got to use it. And that sounds terrible, but my mother wrote in my baby book that I was a very good baby. I literally took care of myself and entertained myself for the first years of my life, because they were running the laundry. My dad was running a shoe repairing place, and I entertained myself.
And look what it's done for you, and kept you in good standing. Now, is this out and out?
This is yes, there is at the ranch, on the home ranch. I'm toddling on in toward the house. They made the big windmill, and
oh, you'd have to be self-reliant out in the middle.
Well, and all those acres.
Yeah.
And that's my mother and father on their 10th wedding anniversary. So I think I'm about 7 there. I think I'm a little big for my age, but I'm 7 and very active.
Precocious, I would well imagine. I can't tell you, because that's a number of years ago, right? You were 7 and 19 and...
30, yeah, I think that would be, what, 19,
Oh.
19, 30?
And this lady's not slowed down at all. But first of all, is this sailor guy somebody we ought to know?
No, that's my husband.
Oh, a husband of how many years?
We almost had 50 before he died.
And I know that there's a son in this family.
Yes, there is a son.
Let me tell you about what I learned about her son. Because she's along in, let's say, her ladder climbing days, she has climbed hundreds of steps of ladders, because she is known famous for garlands, cedar garlands that are all around every Christmas season, right? How many yards of it did you make?
A year it was 1,700 yards.
Hand done. She started with rope, but when she'd go back, they'd taken down the garlands and thrown away the rope, and that was too extravagant, wouldn't it?
Yes, I was getting the rope that PP and L, it was Copco, them, were throwing away that they used to pull cables with, and when it couldn't be used anymore. But so then I started using number 16 stovepipe wire.
Well, she's frugal. I'll tell you, if you look at that sweater, you'll know that this woman is frugal. This happens to be incredible coat of many colors. And folks, it's not just one, it's reversible. So you've got a whole new set of cool colors over here in case you have been so creative. Tell me the story about bus driving. Why? Were you a bus driver?
Because my husband got the job and suggested I take it.
Oh, no, different story, different story. She was a 4-H'er, right?
Well, yes, I did the bus driving for 4-H later, yes.
Well, how many years did you drive bus?
I was almost 19.
And,
but I drove for the river, Bobby Pruitt River Guide before that. And that's how I got into the other, because I'd go over to Merlin and put gas in all these cars and the thing, and with his trailer and everything. And Virgil Walker would see me, and so when he needed a driver, he asked my husband, said, "Why can't Bonita come in and drive?" Says, "I need a driver." He came home, and I had never worked outside my home. I sold things, had the gift shop, I did things, but I never worked a 9-to-5 type of thing. And my husband suggested, well, he said, "You like kids and you're a good driver, why not?" So.
Oh, I'll bet you there's kids around town. She was my bus driver.
Oh,
she
yes.
was my bus driver. Well, then somehow you put bus driving and Corvallis together. I've heard that story.
Well, I was driving, I taught Girl Scouts archery for 17 years, and then I was starting to do crafts with the 4-H. And I was doing the two, but then I got the chance to drive the bus up to OSU for a summer week for the 4-H. And that paid. So I had to drop the Scouts, sorry, but I still go to their Scout-oramas and teach rocks. So I haven't dropped them. But so I drove up to Corvallis so the more kids could get to go to summer week, and then they got me teaching while I was up there.
Sure.
Calligraphy and crafts and string art and whatever.
What's the art here right beside us?
Oh, those are silk screen and airbrush targets to be used for archery.
Well, I talked to people from the Broad and Gun Club, and they said, "Oh, she has." So this would be something that you've made. Mm-hmm. I see your name, Bonita, which is a beautiful name.
That's what it means.
And, I'm going to show you all these beautiful targets. They are, especially this one with the backside of the, why this one? quietest
Well,
one.
I got a sense of humor. I've got to get some fun out of what I do.
Absolutely.
And that is what most of them get a look at.
They get a look at the deer leaving town.
Yes, and they have fun shooting at it too.
Now, before I leave these garlands, you've done more than just garlands. If it's cedar, you can tie it, wrap it, or build a skirt.
For the caveman.
I didn't know he was a quilter, but tell me,
Well,
how big is the girth of the caveman?
16 feet around his waist.
Oh my.
And his hand, I make the door swags, and the one door swag, which is about that big, fits right inside of his hand.
Well, if you folks haven't been to Grants Pass, when you take the second exit, well, second going north,
Yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce has this giant caveman. We call him the ugly one, not the cute one on the cheese label, but and they have had more fun. You met a guy who knew about the garland. The guy who put it on this.
Well, the Linda Buchan, whatever how you pronounce it, with the Chamber of Commerce, she got the idea. She made the cap, and she asked me would I conspire with her and make the skirt. And I said, sure. I got this stuff that you put around culverts to keep people from driving into it, you know,
Sure.
that mesh. And I wove the Port Orford cedar in it, and then we got it in there and put it up. And we had to have somebody with a boom truck, and he got stuck in the lawn. It was wet. And so I finally had to get the fire department to put the hat on.
Good fire laddies. Thank you. Thank you. And you were afraid, you said to the guy, you know, be careful of that caveman, and he said, what?
He said, he was using a cordless drill to put the garland, the swag in, and he says, I know what it's made out of. When I was in high school, I helped put a diaper on it. I think that's the first time he had confessed to it.
I've heard fun stories about Ashland, and they over there they have a statue, and about every young person has a story about some kind of silly shenanigans that were going on. They would decorate that statue.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Now,
You've got to have fun.
you gotta have fun, and fun is where you make it. But you do more than just make chains and shirts and sweaters and things. This has been well used. Folks, she's got a whistle, a light, and how many keys? You must have the keys to the kingdom here.
Well, I open a building or so for meetings, and
You're trustworthy.
evidently a man gave me that job. It was his, and he asked me if I would secretly go do it. He had cancer, and he was didn't want anyone to know that he was not able to do it anymore, and asked if I would do it, and I did it for. He died, and the building kept being opened, and and I've done it ever since.
Oh my.
30-some years.
30-some years. Now the little velvet,
That's my fuzzy book.
your fuzzy book.
Warm, fuzzy pictures go in there.
Of whom?
That's my son and his girlfriend. His wife died when he had 3 little children, and he raised them for 8 years. They're 6, 9, and 11. And then he married again and had another boy, and then she divorced him when the Hull fire got too close to their house, and she wasn't going to go back to that house again. And but now this is his girlfriend. He's known her since over 35 years.
Well, you know, he looks like a mountain man that you'd just be real proud. You live out in the country, right?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
out by Pottsville. Friend of
yeah.
all of ours, Deb Potts.
Pat's, oh yes, he was a good friend. Yes.
Counted him among my friends.
Oh, he was
I was honored that he counted me as a friend.
Yes, he was a great man. Never got $1 off of anyone, so he was beholden to no one. Stayed honest.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he was the mayor of Grants Pass following my father, but fortunately they weren't in a contested election. And he's gone the state capitol, and I was so privileged to interview him 5 different times. And those tapes are now in the archives, Oregon State Archives. Just such a privilege. They were even used in his services because in his own words, you know, incredible. What, more cedar?
Yeah, that's artificial because it needed to be permanent in the contest for decorating your courier box. And so
that local newspaper, you just...
But that red rose, it's about this big, and I made it out of kitty can lids.
Okay, she doesn't throw anything away, folks.
No.
There's a use for everything. I mean, this is an incredible woman. When you see her at a show, where maybe at the Hugo Quilting Club or things, she'll have things she has created out of nothing. Out of rock.
Rock.
Sure looks like a mushroom to me.
Well, I carved little roses and flowers and everything, but they would be too hard to see on TV, and so but I thought that would be representative of that's soapstone, and I carve even Brazilian agate.
Because you're a rock hound.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, people talk to me about you.
Uh-oh.
We have mutual friends, and you don't forget a lady. Well, you were Rosie the Riveter last time I saw you in a pageant about women.
About 3 years up at Kaiser, Vancouver.
And people who did work while the men were off fighting World War II, the women came to work.
Right.
And in the play, Rosie the Riveter, guess who was it? I've since met a number of women who worked in shipbuilding or in an industry, and I didn't hear a whine out of one of you.
We weren't whiners. We weren't allowed to get a raise. We weren't allowed to go to the union meetings. We had to pay the union dues, but we kind of said, I don't think we want to go to those meetings, so let's not make a fuss. But they weren't put on raises, 5 cents a month if you were worthy, like the men were.
I had no idea.
We stayed at 95 cents an hour and thought it was wonderful. And
for the whole war?
But the Maritime Commissioner Union or somebody followed another gal and me around, and then they went before, without our knowledge, went before the bunch and argued that these 2 women are now doing journeyman work. They should be, if they're worthy, allowed to have the raise and become journeyman at $1.20. Oh. And they said, okay, all right, if there are any others that are worthy, why, yes, okay. And so they passed that, and they said, well, now, listen, you admit they're doing work, worthy work. It wouldn't be good to raise them now. They said, okay, you got us. They can make the step in 1 step, but that's the only 2 that ever make the step from helper to journeyman in 1 step.
Wow, this is women doing work.
She became a lead man, and we didn't mind being called lead man, and I was an assistant lead man, took over the crew when they were gone. Only 2 of history, I guess.
It's you?
Yeah, her and I. That's my graduation.
And this one?
That was when I went up to the shipyards to work.
Okay, and there he
is my husband and I.
Now, you've been written up lots of times. It's called The Christmas Lady. You've got wonderful stories about the appreciation. I mean, these were all over you've made hundreds of feet of garlands.
I'm going to try to get all the records together and add it up, because I think it was 200 stories high or something one year that
The equivalent of a 200 stories.
that I climbed.
Wow. Why all these art pieces? I mean, I have a whole set of art pieces here.
They were for archery targets. Ernie Pruitt got us into archery. My son was a man, my husband and I, and they only had little targets, and they needed big ones, so I made big ones. Sold
Well,
them
now
to
you
them.
mentioned the Pruitts. You're not talking the Pruitt seed and feed people. You're
Oh,
talking
yes.
their parents.
No,
Their
Pruitt's,
uncles?
Pruitt's Seed and Feed, and then, of course, when they were kids, some of them went to school with my mother over in Bonanza.
Because they come from over there. And
Well, they came from,
the Dr. Pruitt.
Dr. Pruitt went to school with my mother.
So, I mean,
And their dad hunted with my grandfather.
folks, it's like this. When you start talking early Oregon history, you find out that we knew one another. I've always wondered if you didn't know the Murphys over there. He was the barber. But that was my connection with Jackie Murphy King. She was the woman taller than me, and that means, when you're a real tall woman and somebody's taller. We've run out of time again. But
Well,
Bonita, I want to thank you so much for being my guest, for being willing to share with, how many hats do you have?
Oh, probably 150.
So every
Every time I get a different skirt or blouse, I get a
And
make
in
a
the
hat
back
to
are
match.
all these crochet hooks. So you want to look out.
I'm ready.
She's ready. Thanks for tuning in to Journeys and Journals. We've gone a far way this time.
Thank you.
And
You do a good job.